Good morning or good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you're living. We are still in the course on sustainable development planning. Today we will deal with module 3, which is about the integration of the 2030 Agenda into National Development Plan using the purpose and delivery-oriented planning approach, the so-called PDOP. That will be done with 2 chapters. The first one dealing with the Sustainable Development Agenda, to see what it is, the process of its elaboration and adoption, and so on and so on. And the second chapter is dealing with the way to use the PDOP to integrate the Sustainable Development Goals into national programming framework, into national development plans, national strategies. Chapter 1 is structured in 6 sections. First, the origins of the agenda, the process of its elaboration, the commitment made by the state through this agenda, what are its guiding principles, and what are the objectives, target and indicators, and what is its monitoring mechanism. So, as you know, the Agenda 2030 is a fruit of a long process originating with the Brundtland Report, published in 1987, as it was the first report that have used the concept of sustainable development, defined as a development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Then follows the Rio Conference in 1992, where the action plan for the 21st century, known as Agenda 21, was adopted. And this was followed by, in 2002, the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, which has launched the implementation of sustainable development in key sectors like energy, health, water, agriculture, biodiversity, and so on, and also has reinforced the cooperation between countries for the acceleration of the MDGs. Then finally, in 2012, at the Rio +20 conference, was taken the decision to launch the process supposed to lead to the development of the Sustainable Development Goals. With that launching of the process, there have been very large consultation, first consultation of states, of civil society, of youth, and African has prepared a joint African country position known as African Common Position, which was conveyed by the African Union. And the agenda was adopted on September 25th, 2015, unanimously by the United Nations General Assembly. So what were the commitments made by the states? First, they have committed to transform the world, and to do so, they have committed to eradicate extreme poverty, to significantly reduce inequalities while preserving the environment, to free humanity from the tyranny of poverty and need, and to take care for and preserving the planet, to engage the world on a sustainable path marked by resilience, and to not leaving no one behind, and also by strengthening peace everywhere in the framework of a greater freedom. So what are the principles of the 2030 agenda? The first principle is universality, which means that the agenda is valid for all countries on the planet as compared to the Millennium Development Goals, which were mainly for the developing world, the developing countries. The principle of integration, which means that all the objectives are interconnected. All the 17 objectives are interconnected, interdependent, and indivisible. Principle of convergence, which means convergence of the agenda relating to economy, the one relating to social, and the one relating to the environment. The three agenda converge towards the same goals, towards the same priorities. The agenda or the objectives are grounded in human rights and are linked with the human rights-based approach. The principle of inclusion means that the implementation of the 2030 agenda calls for the participation of all citizens in all segments of society, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, or identity. And there is the principle of leaving no one behind, which means that the 2030 agenda is aiming at all people living in need and in situation of deprivation, wherever they are, in order to respond to their specific difficulties and vulnerability. So the objective, the target, and indicators of the agenda, 17 goals, 169 targets, 2044 indicators that can be viewed by clicking on the hypertext link, the hyperlinks. So what's the monitoring mechanism of the agenda? It comprises 3 levels. The highest is at the global level, with the high-level political forum, which is under the authority of the United Nations General Assembly, and the ECOSOC, plus the states, the NGOs, and the private sector. So that's the highest level of monitoring the agenda. So there is also another level for monitoring them at the regional level, and the freedom is left to the regional entities to find the most appropriate mechanism to deal with that. For Africa, the African peer review mechanism has been identified to play that role. The lowest level is the national level, which is based on national sustainable strategies through the monitoring of the national strategies, and also by the monitoring of the achievements of the goals every 4 years with the contribution of civil society, local communities, universities, private sector, parliament, national parliament, and so on and so on. So we are coming to the heart of this module. So how do we integrate the SDGs in national development plans and other national programmatic documents like strategies and policies? That will be dealt with in 3 sections. First, what does it mean to integrate the SDGs in the national development plans and programmatic document? What are the tools and schemes available? What's the PDOP approach? We have seen it, but that will be the heart of this chapter as well. What does it mean integrating the SDGs into national development plan? It means to adapt the SDGs to the national socio-economic, political, and environmental context by adjusting plans to take into account the SDGs, by developing a new plan taking into account the SDGs, or by revising sectoral policies or strategies to integrate the SDGs. Whatever you choose to do, depending on the context of your country, there are some mechanisms, some schemes that are available to support your operation. One of them is called mainstreaming, acceleration, and policy support. That's a scheme put in place initially by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, to support the country. But later, this is that become a UN-wide mechanism, a UN-wide scheme to support the country to mainstream the SDGs in national development policies and strategies, and to accelerate, because it's challenging to achieve the SDGs within 15 years. So these schemes support the countries to put in place acceleration strategies to succeed to achieve those goals within the defined time frame, and to avail technical assistance to the countries in need to mainstream and to accelerate the pace for achieving the SDGs by 2030. The second one is a tool, and it's the tool that supports the country to see at what extent the national strategies and policies and national development plan they take into account the SDGs. This exercise ends up by saying for each objective what the percentage of integration in the national policies and strategies, and advise the country on the way to better fulfill the gap, so they may be able to achieve the objective in 2030. The IPRT, which is a tool that has been elaborated by the Economic Commission of Africa, which is meant to support the planning, the integration of national plans, and the reporting on the SDGs within the national policy strategies and plan. But this module will be dedicated, no, the sixth module of the course will be fully dedicated to this tool. So you may learn much more on it within that sixth module. Now we are coming to the critical part of this module, which exposes how to use the PDOP approach, purpose and deliverable oriented planning approach, to domesticate the 2030 agenda. To do that, one needs to determine the goals and deliverable relating to the SDGs targets relevant to the country, and then determine the different levels of results, vision, impact, goals, outcome, and outputs on the basis of the goals and deliverables. To perform diagnosis, diagnostic analysis when necessary, and to develop the virtuous chain of transformation. Doing so means to reply to the following questions in relation with the SDG targets. What are the goals and deliverables of each of the SDGs or the targets in relation to the context of the country concerned? What are the impacts that can result from it? What are the resulting effects? Let's say, what are the resulting outcomes? What output should be produced and for which recipient, so that the transformation towards the SDGs can start. But to do that, there are some challenges that need to be addressed, which are in relation with the way the goals and the targets of the 2030 agenda are formulated, are presented. When one read them, one can feel that those are wishes for the good of the planet by 2030, but which need to be translated in the planning language, in distinguishing the different level of the results. So by bringing out what is vision in these wishes, what is impact, what are the outcome, and what are the outputs. So it's very important to translate the way the agenda is formulated into those concepts. Those are typically the planning language. Second, there is the universality of the goals. Those are goals for all the countries on the planet. So possibly they may take into account the context of all the countries. So for that reason, they are disparate in terms of the logic of results. So as such, they do not meet the criteria, not all of them, but most of them do not meet the criteria of result-based management, which is smart, simple, measurable, and so on. Beyond that, there are some missed objective result of different hierarchical levels. So you may find some impacts with output or vision with output which are within the same target. So the big challenge for the planner is to draw from this apparent inconsistency a coherence of result levels to describe through the result framework, or in this specific PDOP framework, we'll talk about the chain of virtues transformation. So through the chain of virtue transformation, the societal transformation desired by Agenda 2030 based on the country context. To do that, we have conceived a table to analyze and determine the result level of data contained in the targets. For this exercise, we have used the first three targets of SDG 1, which is about ending poverty. So in this table, you can see in the first column the title of the target. In the second column, the phrasing, the labeling of the target. The third one, the way we can split each of the targets, because as we have said it previously, you have very mixed target whereby you have many elements that that structure the target. So we need to split to break it down in very simple elements. So this third column serves to that end, and the fourth column, which is used to formulate the deliverable that can be derived from those simple elements of each target. And based on the purpose and the delivery, we can conclude whether each of those subcomponents is a vision, an impact, is an outcome or an output. So that's what the fifth and last column serve for. So to do that, we consider that each target per se is a purpose. So we don't need to formulate the purpose. What we need to formulate, what we need to find out inside the framework of the PDOP is to find out what is the corresponding deliverable. So when you take the first target, which is formulated by saying by 2013, completely eradicates extreme poverty worldwide. So that's a target, that's is a purpose. To that purpose correspond a deliverable, which is formulated as follows. We want by 2030 a society where there is no longer any extreme poor, a society where there is no longer any extreme poor. So the same thing has been done when you take the second target. We had to split it in three subcomponents. We have a component, a subcomponent which is devoted to the target but expressed for men. There is a second one which is expressed for women. There's a third one which is expressed for children. And each of them has a specific deliverable. And this deliverable, you can see, the first for the men is society where at least 50% of the men categories are no longer poor, and so on and so on. So whenever you have a wording that's talking about society, it's something that is beyond a specific sector, health, education, or housing. It's something that is higher than all those ones. So it's the society we want to have, where there is no poverty, where there is no extreme poor. So those are vision statements. So you can see through the deliverable that they correspond to vision statements. You can see for the third target that when you look at the deliverable, that they correspond to output. Output in the framework of the PDOP is something you can use, one can use because you will use it by using the marketing approach. One needs to seek what you think about it. Otherwise, you will not use it if it does not correspond to your value, it does not correspond to your purchasing power, and so on and so on. So we can see that the people will use the social protection system, they will use the circle, the social protection circle, and so on. So those are output. Based on that analysis, we have a raw material that will allow us now to integrate those targets into the national plan. The output is the smallest level in the PDOP framework. It's not activity. If you remember, we have cancelled the activity from the result framework of the PDOP. So we have the basic elements of the chain of virtual transformation here, which is so the two don't need to change. We just have to put them as raw material to see later to which outcome we will link them, to which impact we will link them. But we may find that by performing the causal analysis of the two visions, as they are under the same goal, they may be linked to that vision. They may be some input for those visions that have appeared through the analysis here. So we need to make some causal analysis to see why they are still poor today, to know what to do so that in 2013 we have a society where there is no extreme poor, and so on and so on. And this one, you know how to do it. It is described in module 1 of the course, and at some extent it is described also within the PDOP framework in module 2. So by performing that, the solution will give you the kind of outputs that are necessary to achieve those two visions, and probably in the list of output that will occur, you may find those two which appear in this table. So what we are doing, based on the deliverable arising from the first two targets of LGG, it can be concluded that they correspond to the vision. So I think that you have noticed that. Second, the vision status confirms the multidimensionality of poverty and extreme poverty, the solution of which can only be multi-sectoral, as I have said it previously. I have also already said that that we need to perform causal analysis and so on. So let's move forward. This slide also is already explained. So the target 3 corresponded to output clearly identified, and that can be integrated somewhere following the causal analysis. So this is very important. We cannot say that we have an output if it's not validated by those who are supposed to be the end users. So this is if we have made some technical diagnosis, we need to validate them with the stakeholders, specifically those whose lives are in play, those who will be using the outputs deriving from our diagnostic. We also need to budget what will come from our work to see what we can prioritize. So that's very important, budgeting. And finally, well, here for the following slides, we have just translated what we have done into steps. So to mainstream the SDGs in the programmatic framework, plans, strategies, policies, the first thing is to choose the SDGs that respond to the country context. Second, to choose also the relevant targets for the country, and then to break down the targets into the simple elements. That's what we've done. We did that table in order to highlight the level of results or products that compose them. And then the first step to identify the level of results that is contained in the last column of the table. And the fifth step is carrying out the causal analysis. Whenever we have some high-level results, like when I say high-level results, those are outcome, impact, and vision. We need possibly to make some causal analysis to see why do we still have poor for this specific example. And then the outputs that come from the table need to be linked to the appropriate outcome that may derive from the causal analysis we will perform. And finally, for this process, from step 6 and so on, the guidance is given in the module 2.23, step 6 to 12. Well, when you conduct your domestication process as described, all the benefits that have been described in module 2 when using PDOP framework, when using PDOP approach valid, you will get all those benefits. So you just have to go back to module 2 and see all the benefits you can gain by domesticating, by integrating the SDGs using this framework. So, based on what I have explained on how to mainstream 2030 agenda into programmatic tools, programmatic framework of the countries, we may request from you to pursue, to continue to reflect some of the issues that are brought out through these modules. Most of them have been sent to you, but I would like you to take time also to reflect to this specific question, because first it gives you the sense of the challenge I've mentioned in the presentation, but beyond that there are other challenges I would like you to bring out by yourselves, and that are linked with the SDGs presentation, because all the country will need to address them. But purposefully, I didn't talk about them in the presentation because I want you get them by yourselves, and so I would like you to also reflect on it, so we can have some discussion on them within the platforms. So I think that I may bring you back to the first proverb of this presentation, which is about Einstein, who is saying that it's madness to think that things may change when we are doing them as usual. So we need somehow to think about how to do things otherwise if you want them to change. So PDOP may be one of those things I would like you guys to own, so that you may be able, when you be back in your countries, to apply it, to make or to prepare, to formulate result-oriented plan that may be really transformational for your specific countries. Because we all need to always aim for the moon, because as the brand said, if we miss the moon, we may land among the stars, and that would be good. Thank you for your kind attention. Ma journée est terminée. Je vais ici foutu. Chose.